Let's move on to the men's middleweight division now, where we have Azamat Bekoev coming in at minus 500, going up against Trishan Gore, who comes in at plus 385. Now, Bekoev is coming off that loss that he suffered at the hands of Yusri Belgrui, a fight where he found himself as a minus 280 favorite. But in hindsight, probably that line was way off, especially from what we saw from Belgrui this past weekend, the way he butchered, dispatched, and finished Abdul Malik. Bekoev was considered to, go in there, dominate that fight with his wrestling, keeping Belgrui on his back. But Belgrui made tremendous improvements in his defensive grappling game, and that kept Bekoev from being able to get to a dominant position, constantly fighting up against the cage, trying to get the takedown, but getting damaged all the while. And then eventually in the opening minute of that third round, we saw Belgrui let go of big shots and get Bekoev out of there. I think Bekoev was very surprised with that. I don't think he was expecting to have as much resistance in the grappling realm as he did. And he has made solid striking improvements to his game, but there was no way he was going to go out there and outstrike a high-level kickboxer like Yusri Belgrui. We've seen his striking improvements in the Zach Reese fight, in the Ryan Loder fight, but obviously those guys couldn't hold a candle to what Belgrui normally does. Bekoev, with that name, you know what to expect, right? Heavy grappling, top pressure, good ground and pound, but also now with an improving striking game, I think we'll see him be able to blend it together a lot better, especially if he's going up against a good enough stylistic matchup to actually showcase it. Luckily, he's not fighting Belgrui this weekend. He is fighting Trishan Gore, who is largely under-delivered after having a pretty good stint on The Ultimate Fighter. If you guys remember, I believe he finished his second opponent, which was Gilbert Urbina, and then he was scheduled to fight Brian Battle in the finale. Unfortunately, he injures himself. He sits out. He ends up getting the Brian Battle rematch eventually and then losing that matchup. He's now 2-4 in the UFC, not really looking himself, right? He had that crazy submission win over Josh Fremd. Then he was able to get that submission win over Antonio Tricoli. But in his last two fights, he's been really getting beat down. Marco Tulio got a 10-8 in the first round, then eventually got that second round finish. And then Rodolfo Vieira went 1 of 15, I believe, on takedown attempts, or 1 of 14 on takedown attempts. So good takedown defense from Gore. But then we saw him get outstruck by Rodolfo Vieira, which is, a big question mark, especially considering that Gore is a guy that often goes out there and utilizes his Muay Thai and his power to try to put opponents away. It didn't work out for him against Vieira, who just had a mission. Use that 1-2, use his counter, use that pressure to really keep Gore on the defensive. And I also think possibly the takedown attempts and level changes that Vieira was sprinkling in there was probably keeping Gore more so on the defensive and second thinking in terms of trying to throw shots of his own. But obviously he was left staring for most of that matchup, and we saw him lose that fight on the scorecards. I think Gore maybe not as good as the hype had made him seen on The Ultimate Fighter. He still has decent knockout power, but I think he was kind of propelling himself a lot sooner than he should have. He was talking about becoming a double champ even before his first UFC fight, and now here he is with his back against the wall and possibly facing a pink slip if he can't get his hand raised this weekend. And unfortunately for him, he's fighting a tough guy in Azamat Bekoev who can really dominate this fight, whether it's with his grappling or his improved striking game. Now, I will say this. Gore could have good enough takedown defense to keep this fight standing, and if he does, he could definitely make it closer than the odds actually indicate. But I still trust Bekoev's ability to mix the grappling, the threat of it, and his improved striking game to really keep Gore on the defensive. Gore could absolutely land a big shot to hurt Bekoev and really change the tide of this fight, especially when you consider that he does have his back against the wall and is facing, being released from the UFC if he can't get his hand raised here. So I would think twice in terms of taking the heavy chalk on Bekoev. I think he wins. I wouldn't even go out there and even recommend a sprinkle on Gore. I would rather pass on this fight more than anything. I still expect the Russian to get the job done here. I think he wins by decision, but the odds have me a little bit twisted because of the potential threat that Gore can present, especially with him knowing he'll probably get released if he can't get the win this weekend.